Three massive NFL stars are skipping mandatory minicamp as those get underway this week across the National Football League. And there are various levels of concern that should be had amongst the three fan bases for these three players. TJ Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers is seeking a new contract. Trey Hendrickson has, for a very long time, been outspoken about his desires to ink a new deal with the Cincinnati Bengals, and Washington Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin is also absent from his team's mandatory minicamp this week. Now, TJ Watt and Trey Hendrickson are looking at something very similar, and that is a booming, in all caps, booming edge rusher market. And that is thanks to the Cleveland Browns once again resetting the market at one of the most valuable positions in the National Football League by signing Myles Garrett to a huge 4-year, $160 million extension, which means he gets paid $40 million per season to be the Cleveland Browns' number one guy on the defensive side of the football. But it's not just Myles Garrett, because Max Crosby got paid too. 3 years, $106.5 million extension, $35.5 million over each season. And that leaves TJ Watt looking at those two numbers and saying, well, I should be at the very least above Max Crosby. He's probably considering himself somebody who should be above Myles Garrett, or at the very least right there next to Myles Garrett. And if you're Trey Hendrickson, you just led the NFL in sacks last year. So he's going to want to come in and around the Max Crosby and Myles Garrett numbers. And the Cincinnati Bengals, as we'll talk about in a couple minutes, well, I'm not sure they have the money to be able to do that. Meanwhile, you look at another name that's on this list, Micah Parsons, who is also looking for a new contract. He's at Dallas Cowboys minicamp, so he's taken a completely different approach to that of TJ Watt and Trey Hendrickson. He's at minicamp, he's participating, and he said earlier today that he'll be at training camp as well. So a lot less to worry about if you are the Dallas Cowboys than if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Cincinnati Bengals when it comes to your star defensive player. Let's start with TJ Watt, because I think of these three, all three of them stars in their own right. TJ Watt is the biggest of the three. He is the most impactful of the three for these three teams. I have very little concern about TJ Watt's status with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think everything that you have heard out of that organization is that they want to make TJ Watt a one helmet guy. And that is something that they don't take lightly. They said the same thing about Cam Hayward, and while it did take a little bit of time, they came to an agreement with Cam Hayward. That's something that if they want it to happen, it will happen. And if it's important to a guy like TJ Watt, that means it will happen. We saw a similar situation with this same player and this same organization back in 2021, where he was holding in for a contract extension, and eventually the player who just wanted to get the work and the team who just appreciated the player and wanted to not get overly exposed with the contract eventually got a deal done and made it work. And in the 4 years since, I think everybody would agree it's been rather worth it for the Steelers organization. So I have little concern that this is something that is going to drag on into training camp whenever the Steelers go to Latrobe here at the end of July. Now, the other outside linebacker in this conversation is Trey Hendrickson. I think that's another one that you really need to follow. He led the NFL in sacks this year. As I mentioned earlier, he's watching these other outside linebackers get paid, but these other outside linebackers, a Max Crosby, a TJ Watt, a Myles Garrett, a Micah Parsons, they are all players that, at least in my opinion, are players that have consistently been at that higher level. Trey Hendrickson has been a good football player his entire career. But last year was really that first year that he broke through and became the household name, the top 5 at his position type of guy. So if he's trying to get paid like that after just 1 year of being a top 5 level guy, considering where he's at and considering what the Cincinnati Bengals have done this offseason, that leads me to be a little bit more concerned. I look at what Cincy has done and what Cincy has on their plate right now. They're a team that went 9-8 last year, despite having Joe Burrow put up historic numbers on the offensive side of the football. Jamar Chase had a tremendous season. T. Higgins had a tremendous season. That offense as a whole had a tremendous season, and yet they missed the playoffs because they had the 25th ranked defense in the league last year. And that's with Trey Hendrickson leading the league in sacks. The defense cost them the playoffs. And yet, Cincinnati continued to invest on the offensive side of the football. Jamar Chase has a contract extension. T. Higgins has a shiny new contract extension. And the defense is very, very young. We saw earlier this week, they cut ties with Jermaine Pratt. We saw earlier this offseason, they lost Akeem Davis-Gaither. We saw earlier this offseason as well, Sam Hubbard, who has been a very integral part to their defense, made the decision to retire. So they are in a position right now where they are putting a lot of stock on the young players on their defensive side of the football, especially at that second level. Jermaine Pratt, Akeem Davis-Gaither, they're really hoping that Logan Wilson can just kind of hold down the fort in the middle there. You're going to need Trey Hendrickson. The problem that I see here is that he knows that, and there's not a heck of a lot of money left to invest on that side of the football. So I look at that one as probably the biggest cause for concern of the three. The one I haven't talked much about is Terry McLaurin. Now, there is a little concern here also because you would think that this would be a pretty easy deal to get done. Terry McLaurin, while some might not believe it, is one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. He has been sneaky elite for the last couple of years, and last year was the year that everybody really took notice of it because he finally had a top-level quarterback. He was sneaky elite with Sam Howell. He was sneaky elite before that with anybody else that was out there at quarterback for the Washington football team or the Washington Commanders. Terry McLaurin has been really good with subpar quarterback play. And last year was the first time you saw he got to have elite quarterback play. And what did he do? He just helped lead that offense to heights previously unknown in Washington. They went the whole way to the NFC Championship last year, and he is an integral part to that entire operation. With all of that, combined with the fact that they're not paying a quarterback for at least the next 3 years. Jaden Daniels is going into year 2 and has a long runway here where he's going to be making rookie quarterback money. So it shouldn't have been too difficult of a conversation to have. That's what causes me a little hesitation with the entire Terry McLaurin situation, because it feels like a pretty open and shut case of team has a star, team has the money to pay the star, team pays the star. That hasn't been the case. And now McLaurin is missing mandatory minicamp because of it. So 3 stars in the National Football League that we are going to have to keep a close eye on over the next 6 weeks after mandatory minicamp to see if any movement happens on their contract situations. Because if Washington is without Terry McLaurin in the early portion of the training camp, that's not a good thing for a team that's attempting to make their way back to an NFC championship and potentially try to push their way towards a Super Bowl in Jaden Daniels' second year. The Cincinnati Bengals are in a precarious position. They are a wild card team with a lot of question marks on the defensive side of the football and a lot of pressure because of how good Joe Burrow and their offense is. Are they really going to risk a slow start for that defense once again? Because the slow start last year cost them the playoffs. If they would have made it to the playoffs, who knows where they could have gone, because they were one of the hottest teams in football. And the reason they didn't get there, a slow start and a struggling defense. So are they really going to play mind games with Trey Hendrickson when that is clearly and obviously The biggest question mark? That remains to be seen. We'll have to keep an eye on it. And then TJ Watt. The other thing I'll mention about TJ Watt is I wonder how much of this hesitation, maybe not even hesitation is the right word, but how much of this delay is due to the entire Aaron Rodgers saga. We've seen reports out of Pittsburgh that one has nothing to do with the other, that they knew that if Aaron Rodgers was going to sign, what he would have signed for, which is eventually way under market value, even though he is 41 years old. It's under market value for a starting quarterback in the league, no matter who it is. But I wonder if waiting to get that exact number on the books is what caused a little bit of pause between the Steelers and TJ Watt. We won't know until we know. And we will not know until TJ Watt signs a contract and gets back out on the field with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's the biggest storyline going into mandatory minicamps around the league. 3 absolutely massive stars who are absent from their current team's facilities. TJ Watt in Pittsburgh, Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati, and scary Terry McLaurin down in Washington, D.C. Going to have to keep a close eye on these things because all 3 of them could make substantial differences in their team's fate for the first month of the season, and as we've seen in the past, which could change their fate when it comes to the playoffs. That's it for this video. If you enjoy this content, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at Nick Belsky. Hit the notification button to be notified every time we have a video coming up. But that's it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.